Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Foul play is over. It's time to put our hearts on the line with you.
This is Foul Play. Foul Play, a new comedy thriller starring Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase in his very first motion picture.
When you first saw me, what did you think?
I thought you were a bore.
I'm kind of a nice guy, and you're really a very lovely girl, with or without your cleavage. And Golly, what do you say? Would you like to take a shower?
Andy, I'd like to start with this one big question, this big central question about our movie tonight, Foul Play, Chevy Chase, Goldie Hawn, 1978. The question is, Andy, why is this movie so hard to find?
Was it?
It's nowhere.
Well, I mean, I guess it's true. I couldn't find it online, so just checked it out from the library. I have a feeling this is one of those movies that, we talked about on we recently did our top 25 of the decade list, and that was one of the talking points between, or in one of our pauses, is talking about how some of this older content, even stuff from the 80s, it's just not being released in any sort of digital form. And it can be frustrating when people are trying to find these older properties to look at them again. And my fear is that a lot of them are just going to get lost to time because not enough people are interested in searching back and looking at older things.
Actually, I did find it at the library. I also found it. Somebody had ripped it and put it up on YouTube. So the link is in the show notes. It might be dead by the time you actually get to it.
True, yes.
But definitely count on your public library for some of these things because it's hard to find. It's not available on digital streaming anywhere else, foul play. So, all right. You had never seen this movie before? What'd you think?
I never had seen this movie before. In fact, I don't think I had seen any movies that Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn had done together. It just was not... I saw Goldie Hawn movies when I was younger, but I feel like I really kind of clicked in with her, I'd say maybe a little bit after this. And I'm trying to think what I would have seen. Probably like Protocol.
Private Benjamin.
Private Benjamin actually would have been the first one that I saw. Yeah. And then Protocol, Wildcats, Overboard, Bird on a Wire. Like there was that period in the 80s when I was kind of watching anything that she did. You know, I really enjoyed watching her. And then just kind of I petered out. I think Death Becomes Her might have been, oh no, Everyone Says I Love You actually I think might have been the last thing that I saw of hers. No, I did see the Banger Sisters, but she's really slowed down. And of course her cameo in the Christmas Chronicles. But this was one that just was never on my radar, and I don't know why. We didn't really watch these sorts of films, I guess, but I had a good time with it. I enjoyed their relationship. I thought actually the Chase Hawn relationship was really nice. I thought they work well together, and I think that Colin Higgins, working first time here as the writer-director, has another fun opportunity to kind of play with Hitchcock tropes and kind of do a Hitchcockian sort of thriller and allow the comedy to kind of come through. I mean, I had a lot of fun.
I'm glad to hear you say that. It's a fun movie, I think, to revisit. My memory of it was completely shot as usual. And I think it's interesting going back to these movies and watching, when you see actors whose caricature of themselves and of who they perform is so poorly defined at this point in their career. I think Chevy Chase became something different after this movie, after his early TV shows, after his SNL, he became kind of a caricature of himself. And in this movie, there are entire scenes where he's playing so straight, I don't know who he is. And I find him so charming. I find him, it's so strange to hear like no affectation in his voice, no punchline coming at the end of a few straight lines. No, we see him playing the clumsy bit that becomes such a staple in his, bag of bits early in the movie, but generally he is not he's not that clumsy guy, right? We're only just getting peeks of who that is, and who he'll become later. That I find him super charming and magnetic, and because of all the funny that came later, my memory of this movie was that it was much funnier, that it was much more of a straight comedy, and it's just not. It is that line between the thriller comedy. I think it walks a very challenging line to be both intriguing and threatening and have funny things that happen in it. Did you find yourself suitably threatened?
Well, I think that's what I find that Colin Higgins does really well with both Silver Streak and this film is he allows the story to not just be a straight up silly comedy with all of the stuff that's happening, but allows it to actually be a thriller and patterns himself really well off of the Hitchcock stylings that we see. We can talk about all the different influences that he found from Hitchcock, but he puts the thriller first. It's like he crafts the story and then he says, okay, now let's find ways to make some laughs in here and find the comedy. And that's where I think that the strength of this film lies, is allowing this to kind of thrill first and provide the laugh second.
And it does thrill first. I mean, when the movie opens, we get an assassination, and if you're just looking at the marquee, Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn, knowing what they've done on television, you might wonder, what kind of movie is this?
Right. Yeah. I just watched Cactus Flower, which is Goldie Hawn's screen debut 10 years before this, or almost 10 years before this. And I had such a great time with that movie. And right out of the gate, she is clearly defining kind of comedy chops. She just is great with timing, great with kind of that kind of ditzy personality, and she just runs with it really well. And she has that here. But again, it's that, the man who knew too much type of story that we have here, of this girl who kind of gets trapped in this situation because of this guy that she met and this evidence that he's kind of hidden with her. And now everybody's after her and she doesn't know why. It plays really nicely and allows the comedy to come as it needs with characters that as you have mentioned, have established themselves as comedic characters.
Before we get into the sort of beat by beat of the film and the things that really stick out to us, you and I were chatting online about kind of what kind of comedy this is. And I think coming off of Silver Streak and dealing with something, as I think a comedic third rail like blackface, like we talked about in that movie last week. Now we have, we're lampooning little people in this movie, and we have an entire MacGuffin that is all about beware the dwarf. How does that bit hit you in this movie? That's
it ends up being tricky because we are in a place where we're this is the period. This is kind of the late 70s when this takes place, and when it's made. And I feel like that's a vein of comedy that people discussed more vocally. I mean, last week, you even talked about when Richard Pryor was on the Carson show, and Carson said, if you had all this money to go make your own movie, what would you do? And he's like, I'd make it all with midgets because it'd be, save money on food. These are those comedy beats that people didn't have as much trouble, and perhaps people didn't see as being politically incorrect at the time. It just was funnier because they're different. And that becomes something that as we as a culture have kind of grown up and realized, it's not necessarily that funny to use that as a punchline of your jokes. Can we find something that's a little bit smarter? And so while it still plays, it does end up being one of those things that's like, it's a little more difficult to watch. And to a certain extent makes me say, well, this is why films like this might not be as readily available streaming, because people realize now there's some stuff in here that, we may not want to bring back up again. I mean, it's always brought up. It sure
doesn't represent our best angels, it doesn't represent that you don't have to be, hurtful to be funny.
Right. And Disney is the only place that I know, the only studio that seems pretty vocal about it as far as their movies, like Hiding Song of the South. But I don't hear any other studios saying that. They just do it quietly.
Todd Phillips is notable for his choice to leave, a comedy, the Hangover movies and Old School. And those were movies that had some of that kind of boundary pushing comedy in them. And of course, in Vanity Fair, he's known for, Vanity Fair, his big quote was, I left comedy because he says, go try to be funny nowadays in this woke culture. There were articles written about why comedies don't work anymore. I'll tell you why, because all the effing funny guys are like, F this S, because I don't want to offend you. He obviously, as a guy who's made some funny movies, has a certain perspective on it. I think this is the movie that those guys are thinking about when they talk about why they're not making funny movies right now.
So I wonder if he's pining for the day when he'll be able to make movies with white guys in blackface and poking fun at little people again. Like, it's such a strange perspective to have, and I get it. It allows for easy laughs, and you can have this whole mysterious threat of beware of the dwarf that turns into a gag with one character, even though it leads to a different character. It ends up now, as I look at this, it feels like an easy laugh. And I think that's the thing that some comedy writers have difficulties with, because it's like, it makes you work harder to find some of those jokes. And I think it's fine. Just work harder, find better jokes.
I wonder if Todd Phillips is a guy who in 20 years is going to be pining for the time when he can make movies about, brokenhearted incels who, attack crowds, right? I mean, extraordinary violence on the innocent. That's one of those things that's pushing boundaries that maybe we just need to explore so we can get it out of our systems.
And I get it. I mean, push boundaries, people should do that. But it doesn't, I think that there needs, find ways to have consequences. I mean, that's I think the issue with this style is so often they do this sort of stuff and it becomes very Bugs Bunny-esque. It's like they do this thing, and this film certainly it holds true as well, because we see what happens when she throws the little person out of her window and he falls into the trash can. It rolls down and all this comedy stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, and this is the frustrating thing. Would it play if it was a regular person who did that? Probably. It probably would be just as funny. So then the question is, okay, so does it matter that there's a little person? It's great that he's getting work, but could it have worked with a regular person, or does it lose the funny?
Yeah, part of the reason this works in this particular case is because Billy Barty is such a class act, right?
Right. Yeah.
And he's a great comic actor with an incredible face, and he's just a unique guy. Does he have to necessarily be a little person to make the joke work? Did they have to make the assassin nicknamed the joke, or the dwarf? Like that, it seemed like it took the easy route toward the comedy, right? To your point, come up with better jokes. That is a real problem I had, and it's highlighted. It exacerbates the challenge of the fact that the comedy is today hurtful. The fact that it was easy, it was cheap. It was the cheap way to go for a mistaken identity trope and let it play out in the naturally comedic streets of San Francisco under construction. And I just felt like it wasn't trying very hard.
I mean, and that's where hindsight has to play. And I think that's why, again, movies like this may not be as accessible via streaming, because when you watch something via streaming, it doesn't necessarily make it a modern film, but it's a much more modern way to watch it, much easier. And I think a lot of people, the masses who probably stream, don't really put context on stuff. It's just there, they watch it, and then this plays, and it's like, so to a certain extent, maybe there are certain films like this that it's like, you know what, make it a little harder to find. It's okay. Does it need an intro by Leonard Maltin explaining it? Maybe not. But I would have to talk to my kids about it before we sat and watched this now.
I was worried about the movie in the opening sequence. The opening sequence, we're at a party. Goldie Hawn is her character is at this party, and we learn through conversation that she is divorced, and she is now her friend is encouraging her to get out there. And we have this conversation where she's saying, you're hiding behind these glasses, and you used to show off your cleavage, and she's having this conversation with Goldie Hawn, who is not wearing glasses. We have not seen her wear glasses, and she's wearing an extraordinarily low-cut blouse. And I'm thinking to myself, is her friend actually looking at her right now? I know that, I recognize that these are things that her friend might know about her and might have experience beyond the scene. But as an audience member, we don't have that experience. And so I was worried almost immediately that our protagonist in this series, Colin Higgins, might not be ready to direct and write his own first feature here. It ended up, I think, redeeming itself overall, but these kinds of things, like the literal interpretation of what's on the page, regardless of the production and costume design that ended up happening since you wrote it, I was worried about that we were going to run into challenges.
It didn't feel too sloppy to me, but I guess in context of what he said about the previous film and how when Arthur Hiller directed it, it was very much just kind of a straightforward directing job. He didn't do much to kind of flesh it out any more than was already on the page. And he was like, if I did it, I would have fleshed it out more because I ended up seeing problems with my own script. I think that's a very insightful thing to see. I guess I would say I didn't feel like it was that different from what Arthur Hiller delivered. So I think it could just reflect on the whole idea of how hard it is to actually be a director. And here he is now in this position where he's in charge of all these departments with so much stuff happening around him, having to get everything done and making all the decisions. And it kind of realizing, I can't just sit here and rework the script because so many other things are happening. I guess I didn't really think about it initially, but in retrospect, as I look at it, I think there may be some of that.
Yeah, well, and it's prioritizing the decisions of what you're going to put on screen, right? Yeah. Like, there are other decisions that might not work, but somebody put some glasses on her. So when her friend says, you're hiding behind those glasses, she's actually wearing glasses. It's just like, it's ridiculous. And so that threw me for a loop. And then point number 2 that worried me, this is a movie I'm going into knowing that it's a comedy thriller, and I'm waiting for the comedy. I don't yet have the comedy. I know we have some klutzy Chevy Chase stuff, but then she has this conversation with her friend. She goes and she gets in her car. Adorable car, totally fits the bill. But the last couple of lines before she gets in the car with Chevy Chase, when he says, I think he does say something funny. What does he say? He says, you're a great looking girl. I'm a great guy. Like, what do you say? Let's go take a shower, which is like, I feel like that is a line that was written for Chevy Chase 5 years later. Like, it's just that perfect level of forwardness that just fits his comedy. The drop line to the credits is like, oh, well, why don't you try it then? And it feels like such a comedic line. And I should be laughing. And what I need is a cue to laugh. And that cue would be music. And instead I get Barry Manilow. And I am not laughing. I'm wondering, what is this movie doing? Like, what is going to happen here? I had no sense memory of what that experience was like. But they give Manilow top, extraordinary early billing, 2 credit screens for Ready to Take a Chance Again, the opening song.
Yeah, it was kind of a surprise to have him pop up. I mean, it shouldn't be, because Barry Manilow was so hot in the 70s. I mean, 73, I think he won his first Grammy. And then, he hasn't stopped. The guy just hasn't stopped. He keeps kind of pounding stuff out. And despite what you think of him, he still draws, oodles and oodles of fans. And, I think that says a lot about him. And I think the fact that he appears in the movie says a lot about, I don't know. I want to say it says a lot about studio choices and the whole idea of, Oscar bait and finding ways to get something in the movie so that it can get some buzz that isn't necessarily, whether it fits the movie or not. And this was apparently not the time when it was just in the end credits, because here we have it at the opening credits, and it does throw you a little bit when all of a sudden, this whole thing, Ready to Take a Chance Again. And I get it. They set her up. She's divorced and not quite ready to take a chance again. And Barry's saying, you're ready to take a chance again.
Literally, take a chance again.
But he does not emote for a comedy film.
He does not.
Nor
it's
a thriller.
Tough way to start.
Neither.
Nor a thriller, right. Right. And then, Andy, my goodness, the first line out of the opening song is her singing la-di-di-da when you go for it from the song. Really? It turns out Manilow was in the car. It's diegetic music, Andy. This is, for me, it was the musical equivalent of her saying, wait, are you up to foul play right now? When Scotty gets in the car the first time. Like, it just is I didn't like it. I don't care for those little things. That's personal. I don't care for it.
It didn't bug me as much as it bugs you.
Isn't this the same? Like you're the one who got all upset in Rogue One, wasn't it? When he tried to, or maybe it was Solo when they had the scene playing on the advertisement.
It's different. It's a pop song. She's listening to a pop song. It's very different than all of a sudden the Empire theme, being used in advertising for "Join the Emperor." Da, 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 da. A little bit different. But still, I don't have as much problem with it being diegetic, but I do still have a problem with Manilow. As much as I can enjoy a Manilow song in context of other things, it didn't work for me that well at this point in this film. Like when Copacabana pops up later, it's used in context, and I'm totally fine with it.
Well, in that time, the Copacabana was used in the Empire, Join the Empire ad. That was huge.
I think wasn't that where isn't that the official name of the cantina in Mos Eisley? Isn't it the Copacabana?
It's a Copacabana, and the entire Empire's tagline is "Ready to take a chance again." Yeah, no, Manilow is big in a galaxy far, far away.
I love it.
You know what? Should we talk about? We spent a lot of time last time talking about tropes, the tropes, but that Colin Higgins has fostered, supported, furthered, and maybe in some cases initiated.
Right.
This is a tropathon. It's a cornucopia of tropes, Andy, this movie.
It really is. And in context of what you were saying about comedy thrillers, I'm like, I feel like there are quite a few that probably kind of burst forth from this place. Because I feel like that 70s, 80s vibe just is really strong here. Now, I should say, I mean, he pulled a lot of his story ideas that I think have become tropes from Hitchcock. I mean, he has mentioned that, I mean, for this film, he mentioned some of his influences as the 39 Steps, Saboteur, North by Northwest, Notorious, Vertigo, Psycho, Dial M for Murder, and of course, The Man Who Knew Too Much. And I think all of that definitely makes sense. And some of those have tropes that I think Hitchcock established in thrillers. And so it's great to see some of the thriller tropes still being used in different ways here. But there are certainly some comedy ones. So yeah, let's go through them.
We start with picking up a hitchhiker, and she drives down, and they decide to go to a movie together. And so we have our first, which actually is, we have a couple of nested tropes that happen in the theater. And the first one is theater violence timed to on-screen violence in the movie. And in this case, she just gets spooked as her date shows up late, and she's already watching a scary movie, black and white movie on the screen. What was the movie?
He shows up late because he's been injured and dies in this.
Yes.
Scene. Yeah.
He does. He dies in the seat. But and so they have one of their other tropes that comes up later is the the comic misunderstanding conversation, where she's filling in the blanks of what's going on in the movie, what he missed in the movie, not knowing that he is bleeding into her popcorn and trying to tell her about, please beware of the dwarf. I'm not sure there's a dwarf in this movie as she's eating bloody popcorn. Gross. The theater violence timed to on-screen violence. He's already been injured, but we do get a scare as he reaches for her. And then she gets up to go get help, and we have the old disappearing body. The body disappears while the protagonist is gone getting help. She comes back and she's made to look like a fool because the body is now gone, and she just raised a whole fit about it.
Yeah, and that, right, definitely is that whole trope of this is a very Hitchcockian one. Setting up a story,
truly.
No one believes the protagonist, because when the protagonist keeps bringing people back, the villains have totally cleaned up their mess.
It's such an easy, natural way to build distrust, an unreliable narrator in our protagonist. Like, we're on her side because we saw what happened, and it allows us to get sort of emotionally uncomfortable with the world that she lives in because they just don't understand her. And it's super effective, and that's why, again, it's a trope.
Yeah, and you did, just real quick, you did mention the movie that was playing with the violence happening. Yeah. That was Appointment with Danger from 1950 with Alan Ladd, Phyllis Calvert, and Paul Stewart. Although in the movie, it's actually credited outside the marquee and in the poster as "This Gun Is Mine."
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
We do get a few tributes to that. As we mentioned, the Who's on First style of comic misunderstanding conversations. First one in the theater. Then again, we get it in her apartment as she's trying to describe the events to the police officers, Chevy Chase and Brian Dennehy. And it is equivalent to the Silver Streak Gene Wilder explaining the conversation to the chief in the little town. And so we get that replayed. In this case, I think it works really well, especially because Goldie Hawn, super charming and baffled. And she's just super likable when she's in that sort of daffy mode. And when she turns around and says, I've got it, the albino is working for the dwarf. And then they cut to another scene. And it ends up being a perfect little cut.
I'm tempted to say, although I don't think it quite fits, but I think you could say some of the misunderstandings going on between Dudley Moore and her as she's kind of trying to come back to his apartment and just all of that stuff. But it's like, I don't know if that's quite the same type of misunderstanding. But
well, it's pretty good, though. I do think Dudley Moore deserves a conversation unto himself.
He definitely will.
Let's put that one in the S&M closet for now. Let's see.
We have the protagonist interrupting an impromptu affair, which happens with the theater owner when she comes out to get help and finds him with a lady in his office, which was a random moment, but there it was.
Totally random moment. Nice in flagrante delicto. We have misunderstood snakes. In this case, Goldie Hawn is sitting in the apartment and she's meeting her the apartment landlord, the houseman, and it is played by the wonderful Burgess Meredith, Mr. Hennessy, and he's making tea for her, and nobody seems to notice as the camera keeps cutting back and forth to this giant python that is slithering around the chair and the table, and eventually comes right up on the table, and we get a little ooh, but it's a very threatening, probably 2 minutes as they're having a conversation, and the snake is sneaking up toward them, and it is very thrilling, and again, we get our hearts pounding because ooh, snakes, and it turns out the snake is Esme, Burgess Meredith's pet snake.
Played by Shirley Python.
Shirley, you're joking.
What if she's related to Monty?
You know, they actually tried to name it Shirley Python, but it was taken by the snake, so they went with Monty.
Let's go with Monty. Yeah. Right.
Yep.
We have another trope. I think you wrote it down as the last one in the library, but I think it works with the last one at work in many places. You know, you're turning off all the lights and the space you're in, which is a large workspace, gets darker and darker as you're kind of working to get closer and closer to the door. And I think this trope pairs with not just the last one, but your last one and you're being stalked, as it turns out.
It does, and it works so well in the library in particular here because we get lots of shelves. There's so much opportunity to play with the camera. Where you put the camera, what parts of bodies you reveal. Are we tracking shoes? Are we tracking hands and cuffs? Are we tracking eyes as books get moved? And I think it works very well here.
It made me question, though, the smarts of Whitey, the name of the albino character. Just have a chuckle about that. The fact that when we get the reveal of him, she's squatting down and she's making space for books on a shelf to put them away. And as she does so, she pulls the books out and sees his face behind and providing the big scare. But that also means that not only is she squatting down to do that, he is squatting down expecting her to pull that out to look at him because she mistakes him for the dwarf, which because he's so short. I'm like, that's a really strange thing for him to be doing that I guess works in context of the film until you really think about it.
And only in the context of the film. Like, that's it. Just stop.
Exactly.
We have what you have called the character switcheroo.
Yes, our religious figure at the very beginning of the film who gets offed right away and replaced with a double that in this particular case is his twin brother with the exact same trope that we didn't bring up in Silver Streak as they kill the boss and he gets replaced by a bad guy. So definitely something that I think that Colin Higgins is at this point showing that he enjoys that trope.
He enjoys it, or, you know, I almost get the feeling like this movie is a chance for him to make a lot of the tropes that he really liked in Silver Streak, but do it himself, right? Like things that he felt like he could do better.
Well, and things that Hitchcock has done well. Right?
Yeah,
I think that's also part of it.
We have the cute girl in glasses trope.
Yeah, and I was trying to remember, is there a point? I don't think so, because she does put her glasses on, and as we know from our conversation earlier, at the beginning, her friend is just like, why do you always have to wear those ugly things? But I don't think that this falls quite into the exact trope where it's the cute girl in glasses, but she's not cute until she takes her glasses off, and the protagonist the guy takes her glasses off and it's revealed that she's this beauty, and now she can finally live like a beauty because she doesn't have glasses on her face.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think that works entirely here, because when we meet her, she's already not wearing glasses, right? Like she's already revealed as exactly who she is. So that would be the central failing. But she does put the glasses back on, and so maybe she's. But they don't do a hero cute girl reveal shot. So
right.
We do have an angry police chief.
We do have one of those. Yep.
And in fact, our Chevy, who is a police officer, a detective, is currently suspended as we meet him. They don't make a very big deal out of that, but we do get a scene where we have the police chief who's says you should just not be, what are you doing? Get out of the way. And we have some moments. Yeah.
That does seem to be another trope. The cop who's, who's on suspension, who can't stay away and has to get into the case anyway.
Exactly.
Totally.
He just can't. He's a workaholic cop. Is the albino a baddie?
We have that again,
Mm-hmm.
Then we got that. We got the not shut door trope of our protagonist coming home only to find the door cracked because they have either gone through her house or are waiting for her inside, or both. And we definitely get that trope here.
And they use the doors so much in this movie. So many of the door closings, openings, behind the door, open the door, close the door. Mm-hmm. We do have the sex crazed bit part. There is so much. It's really, Dudley Moore is just a sex crazed lunatic, and we get a lot of him in this. We get the I'm not even this isn't even my real name. I'm not really here. Yeah.
Well, and I think that trope ties into the whole idea of a bit character who pops in strange ways throughout the film, like bumping into the protagonist over the course of the film, only to have them revealed in some stranger way at the ending. Like they're also connected to the end of the story, right? As he is here. That's definitely something that we've seen.
And one that we really absolutely cannot miss, because it happens, it seems to happen in every movie we talk about right now. It's the cops bring civilians with them to places where civilians shouldn't be brought along.
Right. As they're doing their police work. Hey, why don't you come along? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It is better here because it's not like in Silver Streak, we had the scene where the policeman throws bullets at Gene Wilder with the gun to actually, I mean, we don't have it go that far. In this case, a little bit lighter, but
you're right. He doesn't harm her except maybe with her umbrella, although.
Yeah.
And then, of course, what would a San Francisco film be without crazy San Francisco chase scenes?
That's truth. San Francisco is just a naturally funny city. So whether you're rolling a little person in an oil barrel down a street or having a crazy drive chase scene, that takes this movie from intriguing thriller to just lampoon car chase, driving over construction berms and getting cars airborne in the streets of San Francisco.
And driving funny vehicles like a truck with a house on its back.
Yes. And the old look, look at that guy and steal the car bit, right? That happens a lot in this movie.
It felt very much out of What's Up, Doc? Another film we've talked about on the show. Right. And then, of course, there's the elderly father figure who, surprisingly, has some pretty mad skills, as we learn, as Burgess Meredith reveals his military ninja training, apparently.
It's like Burmese jungle fighter, and he is, of course, fighting against the wonderful
Rachel Roberts,
Gerda Caswell, as Rachel Roberts as Gerda Caswell, and I believe this was her last film, and it's one of those bits that the comedy works because it's so against type and out of expectation, and I think it plays really well. It's good fun.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah, just a few tropes in this film. And, I will largely say I didn't feel there were any that I tired of, because the film felt of a place where these sorts of tropes fit.
Everyone playing out these tropes was just so likable. Like, I just found myself so into the people and the way they were playing these parts. And I think this is a good enough time as any to talk about Dudley Moore and what we get from Dudley Moore in this thing. I mean, are you a Dudley Moore fan? Like, do you find you like his movies?
Dudley Moore is an actor who, again, kind of the era when I was watching some of these movies, I ended up seeing, a healthy dose of Dudley Moore stuff. I think, he's one of those guys who popped up on stuff like The Muppet Show. And so I definitely saw stuff like that. And I think it was the mid 80s when I started seeing him in movies. Like, I missed some of like the Arthur and Unfaithfully Yours. I think Best Defense was probably the first thing I saw of his, unfortunately. Mickey and Maude, Santa Claus the movie, Like Father, Like Son, Crazy People. That's probably my favorite movie that I've seen of his. So I missed a lot of his career. So I've always thought of him in my head as very much kind of an 80s comedy actor that I watched.
I find myself really, I don't know if inspired is the right word to use about Dudley Moore, but I really like Dudley Moore because of just how his career wound. And I don't know how it ended up. I'm probably saying all this stuff and somebody's going to write and say, well, he ended up in a ditch and it was horrible. But when I was watching Dudley Moore, I was really inspired by him because he was a child prodigy, musical prodigy, right? I mean, he as a musician, he is absolutely exemplary. And then he found a way into this sort of comedy bit where, he was able to get in movies and consistently make me laugh and feel things. And so I just really found that he was a guy I could connect with on screen. And then to see him in this again, I'd totally forgotten he was even in it. And that he is this sex-crazed concert or conductor it was just too much. The mistaken identity bit where Goldie Hawn effectively picks him up in a bar and he takes her back to his flat and slowly unravels or reveals all of the accoutrements in his flat that has been outfit as a den of iniquity, right? Is just a priceless peak of comedy in this movie because it is the most broad of the comedy that she is behind these curtains and we know what's going on behind her as he keeps saying, oh, are you into that? You want binoculars? I read about that in Penthouse. Right. And the bed unfolds and the lights and the disco ball and he's dancing and taking his clothes off and he ends up, it's just...
It's got the inflatable doll that's like the balloon.
That are apparently inflated with helium because they float. So I find that entire sequence and her, the way she responds to it is really priceless because she's not that shocked. Like she's pretty chill about the whole thing, that it's just a misunderstanding. And I can't, but you find her curious about it and just generally adorable and understanding. And then she walks out. It's not crazed. It's just perfect.
Right. And then she runs into him in the massage parlor and the whole thing plays all over again. And that's where I think the threat comes a little more close to him because, they are looking for him in the theater and she or in the massage parlor and she gets him to go out to try to make a phone call. All that sort of stuff happens. And only to have the reveal that we talked about with the sex crazed bit of the character going full circle. He is the conductor of the opera that the whole climax of the film takes place at.
Yeah. So I think it's really great. I think his timing is just really perfect. And he's got the goofball bit nailed. I like him.
I feel like it probably helped push him into more of his movie career because, he had been in some stuff, but not in huge roles. I think mostly he was known for just the kind of the comedy stuff that he was doing, I think on the BBC, right? With Peter Cook, where they were kind of doing stuff. And and so, I mean, he had done some films, but I think it really bursts in the early 80s with Arthur, I think. I think that's largely where he kind of takes off from. Well, I'd say actually maybe right after this with 10 probably is what really kind of...
10.
Yeah.
That was going to be it. That was going to be it. And he had some issues, some choices, some movies that we've talked about that aren't as, that are movies that you would be challenged to talk to your kids about. They just don't work as well as they did. But he also did the Santa Claus, right? He played Patch in Santa Claus, the movie. And that was one that was a staple around my house for a number of years. So
Crazy People, I feel like that should be one that you would also love because of, just kind of your time in kind of media. The honest advertising in that film just endlessly gives me giggles.
It is perfect.
Volvo,
it is just
they're boxy, but they're good.
But they're good. Totally. So that's Dudley Moore. He's wonderful, and he's great in this movie. How'd it get made, Andy?
Well, this was we've talked about, Colin Higgins really did enjoy these homages to Hitchcock and really kind of created this script, which was originally called Killing Lydia, as another homage to it, just like Silver Streak was. And he did have Goldie Hawn in mind. He had met her through Hal Ashby, but he couldn't get it to take off. And then he reworked the script and took it to Paramount. They were trying to get Farrah Fawcett to come on board, but she was stuck in a legal battle with the Charlie's Angels producers, so couldn't get out of that. And then they decided to go with Goldie Hawn, which was great. And as far as the Chevy Chase role, he had actually written it for Tim Conway, but Tim Conway, who I love, he turned it down. And I guess it also had been offered to Steve Martin, who turned it down. And what I read, which I think is kind of interesting, they also, Harrison Ford was also one of the studio's choices for it, but he had actually turned this down in favor for a little known opportunity that he had at the time called Star Wars.
Nice choice.
Probably good for him.
Yeah.
You can't even imagine now, just not having him as Han Solo. How weird would that be?
It's so weird, especially if it had been Chevy Chase who got Han Solo. It's just, can you even imagine
now
Chevy
trying
Chase
to contextualize that in The Force Awakens with an old Chevy Chase out there?
So funny.
Oh, I love recasting
just
movies.
Imagine him. He just dropping weapons left and right, like slipping off of wet surfaces. We get that here. Just imagine. Yeah, no, it's perfect.
That's great. That's great.
I recast it. It's done in my head.
It's done. It is done. Let's see. Chevy Chase did get cast after all that, and apparently he is the one who kind of pushed for Dudley Moore to be on board. So, and I guess I didn't realize this, but after having talked about it, his push for Dudley Moore is really considered what was the turning point for Dudley Moore to kind of burst forth with his career. So there you go. Now we have that answer.
We should mention the young Brian Dennehy in this movie.
But does it just seem like that is a man born to play police officers?
Well, kinda, yeah. And I don't know. I mean, before he did this, he'd only had a TV. He'd had some TV stuff. Had he done? I guess he'd done a couple of movies. Looking for Mr. Goodbar.
Right.
He was the surgeon.
I mean, nothing too big. Semi-Tough. He was in that. And Bumpers. I'm not even familiar with that. But those all were a year before this. And then Foul Play and Fist with Stallone, and then he ended up in 10 also. And I mean, he really kind of took off. I don't know. I feel like is First Blood really the place that you'd say just he seemed to really stand out?
Well, I would for sure, because that's that was my Brian Dennehy started with First Blood, so it was certainly the one that put him on the map for me. I didn't remember that he was in 10 until years later and saw it. I mean, he was a secondary character for me.
Man, just that guy has not stopped. I mean, he's still acting and stuff as of 2018. Still working on stuff, and I love that he's keeping busy.
Buddy Thunder in pre-production, Son of the South, Grandfather in post-production for 2020.
Yeah,
amazing career of like 183 credits.
You mentioned Burgess Meredith. I mean, we've talked about him on the show before, but I mean, I love seeing him in this role that doesn't seem huge. Kind of just a almost, I guess you could say, a grandfather figure for Goldie Hawn's character. He's the landlord at her apartment complex. But as you already discussed, how great is it to see him when he wields his fists in his crazy fight against Rachel Roberts. I mean,
it's unbelievable, them rolling on the floor together. Hair pulling, clawing. It's non-traditional fighting styles, jungle fighting styles.
Rachel Roberts seems so funny in that role. I mean, we talked about her somewhat recently on the Murder on the Orient Express bit as the assistant, I believe, to the queen or the princess or whatever she is. Right?
That's right.
Hildegard.
So this movie, she did a bunch of TV stuff after this movie, but she do, I guess Yanks, When a Stranger Calls, she was in 1979.
Which was wasn't that a TV movie originally?
Maybe. And then Charlie Chan and the Curse of the Dragon Queen, was that a TV movie in 81? Well, this was pretty close to the end of her career. And she died in 1980, so young, 53. Yeah. But she was fantastic in this. I think this is she's representative of an interesting thing in this movie, which is that the entire caper is like what the bad guys are trying to pull off is really deeply secondary to what is going on with the film, uncovering the film, finding the film, and Goldie Hawn's kind of role. Like the fact that we have the Archbishop murdered in the opening scene, and we don't see the Archbishop again for like 90 plus minutes. We don't, like, there's no context for why that happens for a long time.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, we see him come back when they drop the car off or they go to check on the car, although we don't really get a big sense of it. But, right. And I mean, Eugene Roche, we should also mention him, who plays both the original Archbishop and his twin brother who takes over the role. But it is kind of an odd little thing that they have, this whole idea of kind of continuing their basically kind of their 60s fight against the power, right? I mean, that's really kind of what it's all about. I love Eugene Roche. He's one of those faces that is so familiar, and I think it's for me probably TV, from stuff like All in the Family and Soap, certainly. And, he's one of those guys, Magnum P.I., he was on that, sometimes Webster, Airwolf, and then in, a lot of movies and stuff, but definitely, Perfect Strangers, he was also in that. That's, I think, where my head mostly goes with him, is a lot of those TV roles that he played.
That's right. Terrific face for this kind of role again. He and Brian Dennehy should do a buddy cop movie. Unfortunately, he died in 2004.
Unfortunately, that worked. That won't work. Mark Lawrence pops up in this as the actual, character named the dwarf, or nicknamed the dwarf, because his name is Rupert Stiltskin. At least I liked that there was a reason that he had that nickname, because otherwise I'm like, that's a stretch, But he's got a great bad guy face, and I do love seeing him in stuff like this. I'm trying to think of where I most connect with him. I just feel like he's kind of a bit character that you see in stuff. He's been in some James Bond movies. He was in Marathon Man, which we've talked about on the show. He was in Deep Space Nine, which you probably, I don't know. Yeah, you probably remember that. So yeah, it's just one of those things. Great faces from.
He is another one of those faces. I remember, you see him in things like From Dusk Till Dawn, and you mentioned the James Bond, Diamonds Are Forever, and The Man with the Golden Gun. Predominantly, were there others beyond that?
I don't know about the James Bond. Oh, Key Largo. There's one that we've talked about on the show with him.
He is one of those quintessential faces, and he is not used extensively in this movie.
No, by the time he finally comes in, it's like, I think in order for him to get into the film, they had to pay off the whole gag with the dwarf, AKA, right, the Bible salesman. They had to get that paid off before we could actually, have this character introduced. So
Right.
But and Billy Barty, you already mentioned. It's a great cast, a good, solid comedy cast of people that work really well in context of the film.
Camera, David M. Walsh. Anything outstanding noted from the cinematography in this one?
I'm trying to think. I don't think I have anything specific in mind, but I do think that Walsh captured the thriller vibe pretty nicely. The shadows where they needed to be, the library scene stands out there. He also did Murder by Death. So I think he had a sense of kind of that comedy thriller and way to kind of blend that sort of stuff. And he's had a pretty full career. He's done quite a few projects. I don't know if he's passed away, but he hasn't really been doing much at all since the late 90s.
He is behind Outrageous Fortune and My Science Project and Johnny Dangerously. And I mean, you talk about like comedy thriller type movies. He's got his hand in a bunch of those too. Some horror. He's quite a varied camera hand. I kept thinking, especially early in the movie, so much of this is it feels very 70s. You talk about like camera tropes. The whole we're going to use transition shots or transition B-roll of, we're in San Francisco, we're going to focus on a skyscraper and we're going to tilt down and that's going to be our transition between scenes. Like it felt like a 70s sitcom, and that paired with the score, which is a fine score from Charles Fox, but there are so many stingers in this. This is an incredibly stinger-heavy movie where we get the little transitional bits to transition us between scenes, la da 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 da, where it just leads us between like city sequences, that I found it really distracting. I felt like I was watching an episode of 8 is Enough, for a little while there. It was just not, it sort of took me out of it, but it's fun. And I think, transitioning to the score in particular, it does a great job of marrying comedy and thriller. There's music that is genuinely intense, and it establishes the thriller beat, I think, quite well. To
that end, I did enjoy it. It did have a very 70s vibe to it, but it fit, and so I didn't really have too much of an issue with it. But it's definitely one that you listen to and you kind of keep it in place for where it comes from. So before we get, we're getting close to wrapping this up, I did want to just bring up one last thing here that I think is kind of interesting. This film, when it was released, the Swedes decided, because of the obvious connections to Hitchcock's The Man Who Knew Too Much, mostly the crime taking place at the opera here, they actually retitled this film when they released it in Sweden to The Girl Who Knew Too Much. And because of that, the Swedes decided, hey, let's do that with Goldie Hawn as her films come out. So in Private Benjamin, that was The Girl Who Joined the Army. And in Overboard, that was The Girl Who Fell Overboard. Isn't that funny?
That's amazing.
Right? I'd love to know if there were some other ones where that happened.
Swedish translations of Goldie.
I think what we need to do, we need to put it out to our Swedish listeners to let us know, because we want to know how Goldie Hawn's films have been retitled over there.
Oh, yes. Okay. Are you ready?
Okay. Or Pete will tell us.
So you already got The Girl Who Fell Overboard, right? For Overboard. Yep. How about this? I'm going to go the other way for you, Andy. Are you ready for this?
Oh, this will be good. I'll have to remember Goldie Hawn's films.
Going to tell you the Swedish Swedish titles, and you're going to tell me the Goldie Hawn movie that it came from.
Okay, let's see if we can do this.
All right. The Girl Who Didn't Want to Get Married.
Girl Who Didn't Want to Get Married. Gosh, I don't think that would be First Wives Club.
Once you hear it, you're going to know. You're going to feel dumb.
Oh, wow. Okay. The Girl Who Didn't Want to Get Married. Protocol? I can't think of a girl. I don't know. What?
If you don't want to get married, maybe you just want to stay best friends.
Oh, of course. Right.
How about this one? Okay, this one. That one was a little hard. I'm going to give you a little bit of an easier one. The Girl Who Worked Shifts.
Night Shift.
Swing Shift.
Swing Shift. I mean, take it. I had the right movie in my head, just the wrong title.
Okay, how about The Girl Who Took Home the Game?
That's, I said it, Wildcats.
Yep, Wildcats. And let's see. Yep, that's all I got.
Okay.
I would love to hear more of those. The Girl Who Bird on a Wire.
Right.
This is super fun. Thank you, as always, Sweden, and in advance to our Swedish listeners who I know are going to help us with this. Thank you
Definitely.
For that. Super fun.
Cool.
How to do an award season, Andy?
Surprisingly, it had some awards, and maybe one of them is because Barry Manilow was big at the time. The song "Ready to Take a Chance Again" was the one Oscar nomination, Best Music Original Song by Charles Fox and Norman Gimbel. Unfortunately, fortunately, perhaps I should say that it did not go to that, although I don't know the song that won. The song that did win is called Last Dance from Thank God It's Friday. Are you familiar with that song?
What? The last dance, last
Is that Donna Summer? Donna Summer's in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's the one.
That's probably the one.
Oh, I know that song.
That's the one that took it, beating out Hopelessly Devoted to You from Grease.
Well, it would have to have been Hopelessly Devoted to You.
Yeah. Also the other songs, When You're Loved from The Magic of Lassie by the Sherman Brothers, and The Last Time I Felt Like This from Same Time Next Year, which was a fine Ellen Burstyn movie with Alan Alda.
Yep.
The song I don't remember at all. I mean, Grease is the word, baby.
Grease is the word. Grease is always the word.
At the Golden Globes, it had 7 nominations. Obviously, the fact that they have a comedy category helped out quite a bit. However, it didn't win anything. It did get nominated for Best Picture for a comedy or musical, but did not win that. That instead went to Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty. That name is probably going to pop up again here because he won Best Actor in a Motion Picture, Comedy, or Musical, beating out Chevy Chase. We had Dudley Moore nominated for Best Actor in a Supporting Role, but he lost to John Hurt in Midnight Express, a little bit more of a tough role there. We had Goldie Hawn nominated for Best Actress in a Motion Picture, Comedy, or Musical, but lost to Ellen Burstyn in Same Time Next Year, which we just discussed. We had Best Motion Picture Acting Debut for a Male, Chevy Chase. How interesting is that? I don't think that category exists anymore. But he lost to Brad Davis. Midnight Express. What has happened to Brad Davis? The other nominees, interestingly, Harry Hamlin from Movie, Eric Roberts, King of the Gypsies, Andrew Stevens, The Boys in Company C, and Doug McKeon, Uncle Joe Shannon. The song again lost to Last Dance for Thank God It's Friday, and last but not least, Colin Higgins' screenplay for best screenplay for this. He lost to Midnight Express to Oliver Stone.
It's fascinating to me just how much attention this movie got then at award season, given how hard it is to find today.
Well, it made a lot of money, so maybe that speaks to it.
Well, we should talk about that then. How to do at the box office.
For Higgins' directorial debut, he did have a budget of $5 million, or about $19.6 million in today's dollars. The movie was released July 14th, 1978, opposite The Swarm, and it did well for itself, earning just under $45 million at the box office, or almost $177 million in today's dollars. That lands the film at an adjusted profit per finished minute of $1.3 million, allowing Higgins some more chances to play.
Fantastic. Well, what a treat to jump back into this movie. It's, I think, a great way to continue our series on a fine writer and director for a movie that, it didn't blow my socks off, but it's funny.
It's funny, and I had a lot of fun with it. It's certainly something that I wouldn't have a problem putting on again because it's just an easy, fun watch.
Well, we should probably take it to the mat.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see all of the movies we've talked about on this very show. If you swipe over in your show notes and you tap the word Flickchart, it'll take you straight to this movie in the Flickchart catalog where you can add it to your own list and see how it stacks up against ours.
First up, Foul Play is up against The Lion in Winter. I got to go Lion in Winter here.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Right.
I feel like this is going to be the plague of Foul Play.
Well, it was for Silver Streak too, so.
Yeah.
But then we have this one, Foul Play versus Stripes. I would definitely say Foul Play.
I will say Stripes.
Oh, wow.
These movies are in very similar area.
That one was a lot more disjointed for me, and I never grew up with it, so I have no connection to it. So
yeah, Chevy Chase versus the entire cast of Stripes. It's not quite enough. So let's take it to the bat. Here we go.
Let's do it. Here we go. One, two, three.
Scissors.
Rock.
All right. Fine.
Well, Colin Higgins versus Colin Higgins. Foul Play versus Silver Streak. I gotta go Silver Streak.
I'm gonna go Silver Streak easily.
Foul Play or Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock.
Star Trek 3.
So many problems with that one, but I will say Star Trek 3 as well. Foul Play or Compulsion? Oh, Compulsion.
Compulsion.
What a great film that is. Foul Play or The Host? Some Bong Joon-ho.
The Host.
The one I have issues with.
The Host.
I'll give you The Host.
You want The Host.
I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
Foul Play or Christmas in July? Oh, Christmas in July, please.
Christmas in July.
What a delightful film that is.
Totally.
Hey, from our last series, we have Foul Play or The Lonely Guy. I'm going to say Foul Play.
I will also go Foul Play. Nobody jumped off a bridge in this movie.
But a dwarf was thrown out of a window instead.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Foul Play or La Femme Nikita?
La Femme Nikita.
I will take Nikita here. Well, that puts Foul Play in spot 324 on our chart. 324 out of 434. Pretty low. That's only at 25%.
Would have been much lower had I had my way and not been so terrible at rock, paper, scissors. And that's exactly what happened on my list. How would it stack up on yours?
A little better. 1375 out of 4262, or 68%.
Man, this one, it fell so far so fast. There was no choice. It just gave me no choice. So it hit 1203 out of 1429, which is a 16%.
Yeesh.
If I am to go by the algorithm over at letterboxd.com/thenextreel, this should be a 1-star movie. And it's just not. It was a movie that was gently offensive, but overall funny, and one that I would watch again. I could give this a 3-star and feel good. 2.5, 3 stars. It's right in the middle of the ranking for me.
Yep, I'm at 3 stars with a like.
Okay, I'll stick with 3 stars and a like. Make the math easy.
There you go.
And there you go. So what does that mean for us? Where do we go from here?
We're going to be jumping to Colin Higgins' second directed film that he also wrote. And this one was very culturally big at the time. I certainly remember it being popular with my mother. It is 9 to 5. Quite the cast, quite the comedy. And man, we get to talk about Dabney Coleman. Boom.
This movie blew up the place. That's my memory of this, is that it was huge. I hope that my memory is as good as the movie.
I hope so too. I saw it probably once when I was probably just too young to appreciate it and really get any of the messages or anything. I just remember the 3 women basically kind of torturing their boss and tying him up and stuff. Like, that's my memory of it. So I feel like this definitely deserves a rewatch.
Absolutely. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
And now, a 5-star review from Mapico from Amazon.com titled, My Most Memorable Inspirational Movie, GOAT, Greatest of All Time, Masterpiece to Me.
Please forgive me and bear with me for this long, quirky review. After all these years, I could not help expressing my sincere devotion, earnest appreciation, and passionate affection for this movie to all those viewers here to share.
I have to confess that Foul Play to me is without a doubt the best personal movie I've ever seen in my life, and definitely the most significant movie that impacted my adolescence so charmingly, as well as profoundly, that it propelled me to reach my lifetime pivotal decision to come study in the U.S., my most idealistic freedom promised land per se, and furthermore, inspired me to eventually pursue filmmaking. even though it was pie-in-the-sky idea back then.
I have to explain the backstory a bit to set the scene. A long time ago, before I went into a relatively small, new revival movie theater near the local river on the south side of Tokyo alone one weekend, I was completely exhausted emotionally and mentally. It's a lost faith, undeniably anguished period of my reckless youth. After I graduated from high school, I got 1, 2, 3 nearly lethal megaton body blow punches in my gut with these back-to-back-to-back catastrophic misfortunes, hardships, and failures, all combined and happening simultaneously. A super typhoon, a perfect storm.
The first punch was, I could not get into an art school I really wanted. I failed miserably. I did not pass the entrance examination. Art would make the world a better, peaceful place. My thinking was simply naive. Disappointed is an understatement. I was devastated. I was not talented enough to reach a level on par with others.
My strict disciplinary accountant dad hated the idea of his son wanting to go to art school to begin with. He might have felt that it's unmanly, considering the fact that Japan's society was still a very male-dominant, self-aggrandizement, rat-race, business-oriented universe. I was not fulfilling his expectations. Later on, it came as no surprise that he was also strongly against the idea that I go to the U.S. to continue my education. So, obviously, I did not get along with my dad at all at this time. There were frequent tense arguments, small karate conflicts, and emotional withdrawal. Questioning his authority with my unrealistic, idealistic ideology was candidly dismissed by him. Due to some Freudian psychoanalysis interweaved with guilty pleasure consciousness, it was painful and frustrating for the black sheep-esque son not to make him happy and proud. My relationship with my pragmatic dad transforming into an unhealthy, suppressing, collapsing, abandoning one was my second punch.
Then, my nail-in-the-coffin-esque third punch arrived in drastic manner. My high school sweetheart, who I had been going steady with for almost 2 years, passed a prestigious women's college entrance examination successfully. A few months after I celebrated with her, she broke up with me. It struck me out of the blue. I was not prepared for this. I had no clue, didn't see any sign that this disastrous milestone was coming around the corner. I subconsciously became a bitter, whining, feeble, annoying, frustrated, disposable burden for her probably. My sensitivity, self-confidence, self-esteem, self-assurance, as well as ego were forever damaged, and such triskaidekaphobia-like fear took over my whole existence.
Anyway, officially I became a vagrant-like Ronin. Yes, high school grads who could not get into college, nor got a full-time job, are just like a masterless samurai during feudal era. No occupation, no identity, nobody. Gradually, I became distant, drifting away from almost all my friends and parents. I could not trust anyone. I lost faith and fell into an extreme catatonic state. I often wandered around the city, shivering, desensitized, with a slouch as if I were carrying an unreasonably large scythe on the back. My only companion was some kind of capricious solitude, floating with cacophonic noise and the smell of the crepuscular city maze. I did not realize how severely the city of Tokyo was a lonely place, even with a population of 10 million. I felt completely isolated, and that all the crowds were non-emotional machines controlled by the nonchalant government. My FOLA, fear of left alone stage, was long gone. My body temperature dropped below zero while spiraling me downward into an unknown, rotten, nightmarish macrocosm. Occasionally, I drove my Honda motorbike alone to the empty, eerie Tokyo Wharf landfill area at late afternoon. I saw a jumbo jet taking off from Haneda Airport, heading to cross the Pacific Ocean. I was lost in reverie, having a slight ephemeral dream that someday I would be on that plane. I was subconsciously looking for a gateway to a pain-free freedom. I didn't think of hardcore liquor, too expensive, nor drugs, not available. Never mind going to seek psychiatrists, psychologists, counselor, therapists. It was inconceivable back then. I felt I was a tiny, misguided sea turtle stuck in an authoritarian toxic city pond while hearing the voice of my dad saying, "What's wrong with being stuck in a toxic city pond, huh?"
I've realized that in our cosmic world we cannot stop time, nor rewind time back. One midnight radio program I listened to under the sheets on my futon bed suggested that time medicine, meaning passing time, would be a sovereign remedy for rehabilitating any pains. To some degree, I accepted, even if time seems to advance at a sloth's pace. Over time, going into the movie theater had become my escapism routine, where I felt emotionally safe and able to get away from my eternally felt unstable, desperate, tormented daily life, even if only temporarily. It was my tranquil, soothing secret nostrum oasis in the urban jungle.
So, without much expectation when I went to see Foul Play, such an entertaining, poignant, forever optimistic, fun, quaint, quirky, whimsical piece of art movie, it was a eureka, fortuitous Judgment Day encountering Messiah moment, as if I stumbled on a vast treasure trove of being alive, plus enlightenment with a huge emotional lift. It was a wholehearted gift from heaven on the verge of a nervous breakdown. In the blink of an eye, my synaptic connection functioned exuberantly, feeling a sudden frisson of amazement, pleasure, and relief, slaking my mental and psychological thirst. I thought I was having a therapeutic silver bullet-like, unequivocally revelatory celestial out-of-body visceral sensation. It was a rite of passage moment to me. I saw a thin light called the lifeline of hope begin leaking through a tiny gap in the heavy metal sliding door of my mind, finding a precious hidden gem-esque emerald Buddha. It was a pure blessing indeed. It could have been pseudo-euphoria, but it did not matter to me then. It was almost like an invisible tattoo's virtual imprinting effect on me. I didn't realize that this type of movie somehow clicked miraculously with the core of my emotional needs. When I got out of the theater, I sensed that the night scene of metropolitan neon signs and traffic buzz with glittering headlights was perfectly photographed and choreographed. I felt like hopping over the river.
In my analysis, there are a lot of considerable factors blending in with the secret ingredients and director's refined ingenuity for why I felt that way about this movie. The story takes place in San Francisco, USA, which was one of the most beautiful, popular, and desirable cities people longed to live in back then. It may be still, although the cost of living there is sky high now. I knew some familiar landmarks and tourist attractions there, such as the iconic Golden Gate Bridge, Alcatraz Island, and cable cars, Fisherman's Wharf, Chinatown, Ghirardelli Square, Lombard Street, Coit Tower, etc., mainly through Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry movies, Bullet, Vertigo, and other visual references of the time. So those attractive locations were enticing. The fascinating, atypical, defiant storyline, which is to prevent the Pope from getting assassinated when he visits the city, also riveted me like an obsession. The gravitas theme, in a comical, lighthearted, romantic way. I later got to know the possible reason why writer-director Colin Higgins chose this particular premise behind it, when one of my screenplay writing professors told us when I took his class at UCLA Film School, where Colin happened to study, and the professor happened to teach him there some long years before. I would say that he wanted to convey his own subtle personal message of his struggle with social acceptance of his unique alternative vision at the time. Needless to say, I was elated when it turned out that I was accepted to UCLA Film School in Colin Higgins' footsteps. It was a blissful and fateful honor to me, even though it may not have looked like anything to others.
Interposing the structure of an unwilling participant, Gloria, gets tangled up with an extraordinary situation, setup. The story deals with a variety of subjects: murder, betrayal, divorce, deception, opera, car chase, romance, slapstick, detective investigation, torture, time-pressing suspense, comedic moment, a python, youthfulness and ageism, feminism, sexism, satire, greed, capitalism, social justice, drug, statements for victimizing women, prevention, self-defense, gender-free equal rights, fraud, MacGuffin, and fascinating Hitchcockian flavor frame story scenes. All elements enchanted me tremendously, including one of the best rhythmically paced, attention-grabbing openings in film history, with a symbolic, cute, yellow-colored Volkswagen Beetle running flawlessly along the picturesque coastline, which hooks you right off the bat. Extremely witty, clever, felicitous verbiage and dialogue with a double entendre, lighthearted sense of humor. Remarkably creative, unexpected, suspenseful escapade plots, even though it appears intricate and utterly wicked at first. and well-done cross-cut cascading down climactic grandioso uplifting culminating finale. I was already foreseeing a bright future while having immersed myself into every moment of this well-paced, intertwined story development, revealing incessant surprises.
I was equally surprised by the well-diversified cast, with a variety of intriguing characters played by well-trained, terrific actors. Burgess Meredith, who I know as Mickey in Rocky, was a big surprise to me. He can play comedy, too. Brian Dennehy is a versatile dramatic actor I really admire. Marilyn Sokol as Gloria's no-nonsense friend at the library is an excellent counterbalance to Gloria's softness and plays a key role in cracking down on the tax crime committed by the religious organization. Legendary Billy Barty as Bible salesman was mistaken for an assassin and ended up being victimized by misunderstood, scared Gloria's non-malevolent intention. Hilarious funny man Dudley Moore gives priceless spices to heighten this first-rate comedic act, accompanying childlike, innocent, harmless jocularity. Chevy Chase plays a cool Prince Charming, trying to be wisecracking down-to-earth Lieutenant Tony, who protects Gloria with great, sometimes zany sense of humor. This movie was the first feature Chevy Chase played a starring role in, fresh out of Saturday Night Live.
When Tony makes Gloria laugh, that's the best moment. Chevy is a talented, dramatic actor, even though he is better known for comedy. In the past, I have borrowed one of Tony's lines, sort of, when I ask out an American Girl. I awkwardly said, "Take a chance. On me. With me." She looked completely blank, agape. Maybe it didn't really convey effectively to her since my broken English pronunciation did not execute correctly. The timing was off, I guess. Anyway, I've contentedly applied something I've learned from the movie in my real life. I was not brave, nor funny, nor politically incorrect enough to even attempt using Tony's riskier, more blunt, and potentially disastrous, "Would you like to take a shower?"
I was actually delighted to see a nervous old Japanese tourist couple in the back seat turning into crazy thrilled joyriders, laughing at full blast while yelling "Kojak, bang, bang!" when Chevy Chase picked the limo to race the opera house. For a high-speed car chase scene. The scene may be criticized for portraying them as stereotyped Asians in terms of present-day political correctness standard, but I was honestly not offended when I saw that. It's a jovial comedy, very much innocent merriment. That era was when Japan's economic boom exploded, so that many Japanese tourists with big cameras hanging on the chest were able to go abroad for the first time. I easily assumed that their flocked-together behavior and mannerism might have caused some idiosyncratic funny looks among those local Americans. My aunt actually gave me the exact same or very similar JAL satchel travel bag. I'd rather embrace that Japan's economic success has helped someone like me from the middle socioeconomic class come to study in America. You see, PPT, power of positive thinking, is a good thing. So to me, it's understandably welcoming as a celebratory and symbolic scene. Even the Mikado, the Japanesque comic stylish opera, has been criticized for promoting Asian stereotypes, but when I saw it, then I accepted it as simply exotic and satirical with super elegant kimono and kabuki-like artistic makeup. It's a cultural charm.
Barry Manilow's title song, Ready to Take a Chance Again, with his impeccable, resonating signature voice, enthralled my senses unconditionally. It's mesmerizing. I occasionally hum and karaoke sing it. Staying Alive by Bee Gees is also effectively introduced, where often misinterpreting Dudley Moore dances hilariously and wackily. It was an absolutely invaluable crowd-pleasing scene. I bought a soundtrack record right away and listened to all the songs, including the music composer-conductor Charles Fox's Get Me to the Opera on Time, over and over. It positively lingers in my ears, occasionally pops up to lift me up and spice me up whenever I feel down. It makes me feel like dancing on the rainbow-colored ceiling while twisting my body and shaking my head.
Last of all, Goldie Hawn's radiant, angelic, beaming, super pure, charming, loving signature smile with merry blue-green shiny eyes not only captivated my fragile, timid heart by refilling it with ample joy, but also soothed my traumatized, fractured soul, resolving my pains and loneliness, and very much chastening me to become a better person and be kind and helpful to others and the planet by expanding my horizons. Yes, along with her contagious, cheerful mirth, we all rooted for humble, romantic, shy librarian Gloria to fall in love again with Tony. Her considerate kindness and humanity shine gold forever. That is her born ultimate prowess. It's subtly shown, but her mental resilience and tenacity for goodwill is super. At any event, I kept digging for any kind of information about this film, including production notes, behind-the-scenes information, history, story, analysis, anecdotes, etc. Whenever I had a chance, I'd like to remind you of the fact that it was way before easy information access, the internet era.
After all, this movie is about not only a slightly fish-out-of-water heroine's adventurous journey of regaining self-rediscovery, confidence, and self-esteem by taking a chance, but also by demonstrating her instinct, courage, bravery, action with kindness, and cooperation from her friends. She would learn pros and cons of life lessons, sometimes in a cauldron risk hard way. She was eventually rewarded something humanely valuable at the end while evolving her mission to find true love, as well as saving the Pope and ensuring world peace. What a big bang combo. Equally, this movie would also be interpreted as a classic girl meets boy love story. It gave me hope, a dream, and a reason to take an action inspired by Goldie's ever-sparkling American optimistic smile spilling over the planet.
Furthermore, this film taught me not only about American values, culture, and way of life, but also the importance and acceptance of lust for simple kindness and affection. This fact cannot be overemphasized, that I absolutely felt that foul play must have played a huge role in leading me to an uncharted, ineluctable, fateful journey for my lifelong destiny. I still remember vividly that I was on a cloud nine when I actually visited those locations, such as Golden Gate Bridge, Presidio, Black Point area, Market Street, City Hall, Opera House, etc., in San Francisco for the first time in 1983. Yes, coincidentally, Frisco was the first town I landed in to go exploring. Every moment has been bonus to me since I was given a tremendous opportunity to come to the U.S.
After all these years, the film still evoked a similar, wondrous exultation with deep, emotional sensation, just as when I first encountered it in that small theater in Tokyo. As my heart is pounding with butterfly-tingling sensation, this movie lifts my spirit upward into the sky, and it still helps me keep going, as if I were prancing around and crushing through cumulonimbus clouds and reaching to the sun. I now can afford some mental margin to spare as I look back. Breaking up with my girlfriend back then turned out to be a fortunate thing. By the way, I unexpectedly encountered that ex-sweetheart a few years ago when I attended a small high school reunion gathering in Tokyo. She was happily married with 2 kids. I was afraid that the reunion would be a recipe for disaster type. It was strange, uncomfortable, tense and awkward on my part in the beginning. However, it turned out that we ended up having a very nice, civil, rather pleasant, friendly conversation, including talking about how to look after sick aging parents and how to improve the effectiveness of the medical care system. We also talked about the particular cafe we used to go to together after school near the train station, which is now a ramen noodle shop. In a way, it was a surreal, out-of-body experience, as if time warped instantly. I guess time medicine did finally work.
Evidently, life is not always rosy. I have been divorced twice. Life is constant repetition of ups and downs, twists and turns. Nevertheless, jaunty optimism is crucial in life. To me, this is a once-in-your-lifetime type of childlike innocence, imaginative, super creative film, potentiating a positive heart and soul, a consolidation of energy drink booster, healthy, vigorous supplement, security blanket, cognitive therapy, and mental amulet to heal my chronic back pain. Unquestionably, this movie, with Colin's incredible fecundity and creative vision, is a true gift I unconditionally embrace, which is forever subtly giving me the encouragement to roll with life's challenges. Having reached the pinnacle of understanding peace of mind and happiness, I came to the realization that movies are such a powerful medium. This film is living proof, since it became my true emotional Bible and led me eventually into pursuing my career in the entertainment industry.
Finally, as if all the planets were aligned, New Art Theater, where the theater scene in the early part of the story was filmed, the scene Scott was killed in foul play, is only a few minutes away from my apartment in West Los Angeles. Every time I drive by that theater on Santa Monica Boulevard, near the 405 freeway, it brings back nostalgic, fond memories of when I first saw the movie. But it also makes me feel that I'm certainly alive and enjoying life in America. I'm able to manage going back and forth between illusion and reality in a more practical manner. And I have to be ready to take a change again into another uncharted universe as my magical mystery tour continues.
Thank you very much for taking the time to read this totally bizarre, lengthy review until the very end. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Thanks, Amazon. It's hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We are highlighting adaptations from Season 9 over at our Originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. That's the site where listeners can purchase the source material for all of our adapted film discussions.
We had a big Robin Hood series this season, looking at 9 different versions on screen. Many were likely adapted from Howard Pyle's The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, including Douglas Fairbanks in Robin Hood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Disney's Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, and the 1991 Robin Hood, and Ridley Scott's Robin Hood.
Robin and Marian was specifically based on the ballad The Jest of Robin Hood.
And we really don't have too much to say about Robin and the Seven Hoods.
We talked Dead Ringers for our David Cronenberg series adapted from Barry Wood and Jack Geislin's novel Twins.
Have you checked out that show?
You know, I haven't, but I've heard great things.
2 comedies from our Steve Martin series were adaptations, Pennies from Heaven from the BBC series, and The Lonely Guy from the book by Bruce J. Friedman.
The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas was part of our Colin Higgins series, adapted from the Broadway musical.
Spike Lee brought us Black Klansman from Ron Stallworth's memoir.
And we looked at a trio of John le Carré adaptations, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, The Little Drummer Girl, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Plus, all 3 movies in our Agnieszka Holland series were based on books, Europa, In Darkness, and Spore.
La Cage aux Folles and its remake The Birdcage both came from Jean Poiret's original play.
We also talked about Arsenic and Old Lace and Charade in our Cary Grant series.
All of these were based on other material, and it is all available on our Originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. Every book purchased supports the podcast.
Get the full list of adaptations we've covered and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.